Welcome back to All Things Money. My name is David Blain, and during today's show we've been talking about the Federal Reserve and the boom and bust cycle that, in my humble opinion, they've actually exacerbated. And we're going to get to a few solutions here in a minute, but before we do, we'd love to hear from you. Send us your questions, your comments, any topics you'd like addressed on the show. Our phone number is 252-633-0107. The email is allthingsmoney@dlblain.com. And of course, you'll find all that information as well as a host of other good stuff on the website, www.dlblain.com. We hope you'll come visit a website. In fact, we're in the midst of revamping it. Here in the next month or two, we'll be rolling out a new site that'll be much easier to find our thoughts on these different topics. So we were talking about the Federal Reserve and its tendency to overstimulate the economy, especially in the past 20, 25 years, that creates these bubbles and subsequently the crashes. And so right before the break, I mentioned that the Fed should be involved in the money supply. Obviously, that's their mandate, the money supply, if they really insist helping keep inflation at a moderate rate. And so what do I think ought to be done? I think what you have to do in a situation like this is the biggest problem is unemployment and getting people back to work. And so essentially this is a fiscal problem, not a monetary problem, in my opinion. And by fiscal problem, I mean that it's the budgeting and the allocation of funds in the country, the government. We're talking about the government. You have monetary policy and you have fiscal policy. And fiscal policy is kind of like your household, the budgeting and where you put money and things like that. And to me, recessions are a fiscal policy issue. And the number one thing that the government should be doing is essentially bribing people, corporations, individuals to go out and hire somebody. When you have someone on unemployment, they're getting paid by the government to do nothing. And so instead of having the government pay them to do nothing, they should take that money and essentially bribe corporations, businesses, whoever, to go out and hire those people. And by bribe, it's usually done, I use that term loosely, but it's usually done through, say, tax incentives is the number one way to do it. You could do some sort of cash incentives. On this show several weeks back, I mentioned that if the president would go on TV and announce that we're suspending or slashing the corporate income tax rate, I could almost guarantee you that overnight you would see a flood of capital come into the United States. You would see these corporations loosen up on the trillions and trillions of dollars that they have in their bank accounts and start hiring people. This is a fiscal policy problem, that instead of having a fiscal policy that encourages companies and small businesses to hire people, we have a fiscal policy that is signaling your taxes are going up, signaling through health care that your requirements are going to go up. And so we're creating these problems amongst themselves. Now, that's what I would consider is one solution. The other solution is, which I believe in, crowding out, but you could have the government hire people. Once again, not my preferred solution. I'd rather that corporations do it. But once again, if you're paying unemployment anyway, you might as well pay people to do some work. Now, not in the skilled arena. That's where the crowding out really comes into play. You don't want to do it in the skilled arena. There's been a lot of talk about the infrastructure and things that need to be fixed around the United States. Unfortunately, just bad fiscal policy and the stimulus bills were mostly, what I would call a boondoggle. But yes, there's no individual or company that is going to be responsible for rebuilding the water system of New York City or the interstate highway system. I mean, these things are, for better or worse, they are government functions. And a lot of those type of projects use what we call lightly skilled labor, and those are most of the people that are unemployed because of the housing bust. You have this housing bust, and a lot of the lightly skilled workers are the people that are out of work. And so we need something for them to do, and you do it through fiscal policy, stimulating the companies and small businesses to encourage them to go out and hire people, or through true, not just make work projects, but true infrastructure projects, not creating green jobs, an industry that doesn't exist. We need to fix stuff that is broken right now and not worry about creating, the green jobs and these ridiculous stimulus plans. Well, we'll talk more about this in a future show, but I did want to touch on a few things. I'm going to be going over the next several weeks a couple of topics about the IRS. We get a lot of questions about the IRS. Taxation is one of our expertise. Minimizing the amount of tax. It's well documented all the way up to the Supreme Court that a American taxpayer, U.S. taxpayer, is not obligated to pay any more taxes than are legally required, and if there's deductions in the tax code, you're allowed to take them. A lot of the problems comes in is people don't understand the IRS, they don't understand how it works, and so forth. And so we want to add in the show over the next couple of weeks, we'll be doing some segments on the IRS, how they work, how to deal with them, so that you can be confident in that you're paying the least amount of tax that you're legally required. So, as you probably figured out, the IRS is a huge, the volume and complexity of the tax rules are almost incomprehensible for anyone to comprehend. Taxation in the United States, I equate it to a game. It's a big game. Not to say it's not a serious game, but it's a big game. On one side you have the IRS and the government who writes the rules, and on the other side you have the U.S. taxpayer who's trying to figure out what those rules are. And so one thing's for certain, if you're in a baseball game and you're the batter and you don't know that 3 strikes and you're out, and that pitcher does, more than likely you're going to be out if you don't know you're supposed to swing the bat and hit the ball, or you're out. Well, the same thing with the IRS. Most people just don't know the rules, and so they have virtually no chance of winning the game. And so what we want to do is help you to understand how to win the game. So we're out of time for today, so hopefully you'll tune in next week, and we'll start to give you some of those answers. For All Things Money, I'm David Blain.
The proceeding was a paid program. The opinions expressed are not necessarily those of WNBU and Inner Banks Media.